Welcome to Sovereignty in Action. I'm your host, Ian Record. I am honored to be joined today by Cheyenne Sanders, an enrolled member of the Yurok Tribe in Northern California. She serves as Deputy General Counsel in Yurok's Office of Tribal Attorney. In this capacity, she has been integrally involved with Yurok's development and implementation of key ordinances dealing with genetically engineered organisms and pesticides, the focus of our conversation today. Welcome, Cheyenne, and good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I shared a little bit about who you are, but why don't you start out by just telling us a little bit more about yourself? What did I leave out?
Well, I'm a proud Yurok tribal member. My family is from the village of Witchpeck, which is in the upper end of our reservation. Our reservation straddles the Klamath River, so it's a part of who I am. I never grew up on the reservation prior to working for the tribe. I always came back in the summer to fish. So for the past 3 years working in the Office of Tribal Attorney, I have had a new experience to get to know our tribal government and our people, and it's been a great honor.
So before we dive into our main topics of discussion, can you provide us with a brief overview of the Yurok Tribe? Tell us about the tribe, the people, the land, the history, the culture, for those of us who may not know much about it.
Absolutely. So we are the largest federally recognized tribe in California. We have over 6,200 enrolled tribal members. As I mentioned, we're stationed over the Klamath River. So from the mouth of the Pacific Ocean up 44 miles to the village of Witchpeck is where our current reservation boundaries extend. And it's important to us. We've never been relocated. So our ancestral lands have been greatly diminished. But where we are now is where we've always been. So it holds special significance to us. First and foremost, we are a fishing people. We are a salmon people. And so that is the mainstay of our culture, our community, and our spirituality. But we are a natural resources-based tribe. So our forests, our lands that surround us is important in everything that we do. We're mandated by our Constitution to care for them, in addition to the direction that we receive from Creator. So that's who we are. We're world renewal people. You know, our job is to bring balance back to the world. And so in our laws that we draft and just in our day-to-day interactions, we're charged to do just that.
So as I mentioned, in December 2015, the Yurok Tribe passed what is believed to be the first tribal ordinance in the country governing genetically engineered organisms, often called genetically modified organisms, commonly known here by the acronym GEOs. Can you begin by providing us a bit of background? What compelled Yurok to take this step?
Well, as I mentioned, we're fish people. So a few years ago, we heard that the FDA had approved what we refer to as frankenfish to be safe to eat. And when we heard that, Council immediately responded by issuing a resolution against that. But what that started for Council is just kind of a more consciousness about what the GEOs and GEMOs were happening around us, and seeing that there wasn't that much education to our membership or our Council about the impacts that could have to our community as a whole. So we started immediately researching and thinking about ways that we could properly educate as well as kind of stake a claim to the sovereign right that we have to govern our lands.
So what does the ordinance actually do? What is its purpose?
So the GEO ordinance makes a statement that we do not allow the cultivation, propagation, or spawning of any GEO crop or fish, animal, including salmon. We also make it clear that we are educating our community. So the real purpose, in addition to making that bold statement, is to educate our community. We recognize in a section of the ordinance that the acute harms of these have not necessarily reached our reservation, but we wanted to make a firm stance and say that even though we haven't seen the detrimental consequences that we think could be happening soon if we don't do something, we wanted to make a stand now.
So you wanted to get out ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
And not wait till the problem or the crisis emerged.
Absolutely.
So can you explain the process by which the ordinance was developed? Who was involved in its formulation and why?
So we have a public hearing ordinance which kind of dictates how we communicate with membership about upcoming legislation. But way before then, we began at the staff level. So we first asked Council for a green light to move forward on the development of a new code. And then we develop a work group. So for this work group, we had the Office of Tribal Attorney, which I'm a part of. We had tribal courts. We had our environmental team, our natural resources team, our fisheries team, and our public safety team. And we also had some help from some outside consultants that were able to coordinate us and to compile information about what we've done up to this point. I think that was a great asset for us because we don't want to repeat the work that we've done. So reflecting on the resolutions that we previously drafted, previous internal memos, so that we came to the table with all the information.
So what role did Yurok members have in the process? And how is, you mentioned education was a key component of the ordinance itself. How is the tribe working to educate them about the ordinance, what it does, what their role is, and why?
So in the drafting process, we have to go out to membership at certain times. I mentioned the public hearing ordinance requires that we go out into the field. So we met in Wichita, Klamath, and Eureka to speak to different members about the ordinance, the draft that we had prepared, and then solicited their feedback. Council also created different committees. One of them that was most influential for this one was our culture committee. So we have a group of elders that reviewed the draft and provided their feedback and comment. So we engaged the membership at that stage. Also, every time that it was considered by council, it was in an open council meeting. So before they take any action, they always pause and wait for a membership comment. We also made use of our newsletter that we have on the tribe, especially for our members that live off reservation. We put in questions to membership to solicit their feedback at the beginning, and then we make note of these public comments and ask for their feedback throughout the process. Once the ordinance is passed, that was why we thought it important to create that education committee that's inside the ordinance. So that committee, made up of a lot of the people that were the stakeholders in drafting the ordinance, are now in charge of really developing an education campaign.
So other tribes have passed resolutions governing GEOs, and in April 2013, you guys did the same. That was the first step you took. But why did Yurok feel it necessary to take that next step of creating an ordinance instead of just proceeding with a resolution like others have done?
At Yurok, we really value the development of our ordinances. We really see it as an exercise of our inherent sovereignty. And when drafting an ordinance as compared to a resolution, you're allowed to engage the membership at a level that's not necessarily required for a resolution. And also, what I think is so important about a lot of the written laws that Yurok has, I think first reflected in our Constitution, in the preamble, in the finding sections of this ordinance, that's when we're really allowed to take a moment and think about who we are. You'll see reference to World Renewal people, reference to our main resources that we have on the reservation. And I think it's really important for membership to remember that that's the frame that we're building this ordinance, that we're building this law. It's not just because we're reacting. You know, this is within our inherent right and our sovereignty. And I think especially in California, when you do have those complex nuances of PL 280, it's incredibly important for our California tribes to have a well-developed body of law.
So you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the process that there was close coordination between the council, the legislative body of the tribe, and Yurok's court system in developing that ordinance. Can you briefly detail the extent of that coordination and why has it been important in not only developing a sound ordinance but actually implementing it?
Absolutely. So when we're going back to drafting the ordinance, I should say that every department is welcome to have a seat at the table in drafting any of our laws that we have. Of course, it was a natural fit for Judge Abby Abernathy and her staff to be a part of the drafting of this ordinance. And I think it's important for a few ways. One, I think her wealth of experience as a legal mind and being also a state court judge provides that perspective that's needed when we're thinking about jurisdictional claims. But absolutely enforcement. Oftentimes, that's where we get the most pushback from our membership, is once they're in court and then they go to council and say, wait, what's going on? I don't recall this being in line with our traditional laws and who we are as people. So it's very important that we think about that. And you also see in the ordinance that we talk about search and seizures. We talk about getting search warrants, which Judge Abby has done for a variety of other type of cases that we have on the reservation. And I think it's really important to be transparent with membership. These are the consequences if you don't follow through. And I think that really aids to the success of this law.
So where does, I mentioned the ordinance was passed in December 2015, so we're coming up on about 2 years since it was passed. And I'm assuming, it wasn't, it's something that you're being very thoughtful and deliberate about implementing. But where does that implementation process stand? Have you hit any bumps in the road, and how are you working to overcome them?
Well, I should say first that the original draft of the ordinance combined the GEO and the pesticide ordinance. So it was originally one ordinance. Based on the feedback that we received from membership, it was decided to split the ordinance. So you mentioned we passed the GEO ordinance, but it wasn't until August of this year that we passed the pesticide ordinance. So we really want to go through our education campaign combined. The education committee is actually a combined committee. You'll see reference to that in the ordinance as well. So for the GEO ordinance, we did the things that we were mandated to do as far as thoughtful notice to our partners and our neighbors on the reservation about this new law. We posted signs on the reservation as well as in the newsletter. But I think after the passage of the pesticide ordinance, we have another 12-month waiting period for implementation. And I think it's at the end of that you'll see a more coordinated and strategic approach with council's guidance.
So let's talk a little bit more about the pesticide ordinance. Can you, again, give me the brief 411 on the impetus for that, what it does, how it, I guess, will marry with the GEO ordinance?
I think the pesticide is a bit more complex than the development because we've been dealing with pesticides kind of in our face, frankly, since we were an organized tribal government in 1988. You know, we're surrounded by Forest Service lands, Park Service lands, and we don't own a majority of the reservation. Most of it's owned by a private timber company. So we've been dealing with these issues for a lot longer. What the ordinance does is it declares the reservation a pesticide-free zone. And it goes, I think, one step further than the GEO ordinance in that we're trying to reduce the sale of pesticides on the reservation. Even things for household use, we want to be a lot more thoughtful about that and be educating our membership about it. So in addition to kind of the massive sprays that you'll see on the forested land, we want to have a conversation with membership about how even household use. You know, the Yurok Tribe is unique. A lot of our upper reservation is only surface water streams. So anything that gets into that water gets into personal consumption use. And one of the main motivating factors has been the rise of illegal cannabis grows. Illegal cannabis grows come into our reservation in more of the isolated pockets that we can't see, but the runoff from those grows ends up into our water streams. And so it's a huge education campaign. It's a huge health and safety concern. And so we needed to be a bit more aggressive in the pesticide ordinance and in the GEO. And that's why I think we separated the two.
So is the pesticide ordinance where's that right now in terms of it's been passed, but you're in that sort of transition phase through to full implementation?
Absolutely. So we're in that 12-month waiting period. We're still meeting with our education group to see what can be done. But frankly, I think we need to be really thoughtful about the sale piece. We've worked with Yurok Economic Development Corporation. We have 2 markets on the reservation. And also for the GEO ordinance, how are we educating our consumers, not only our membership, but guests that come onto the reservation and who buy things in our store about the types of products that we're going to be selling. So that also triggers not only council and our staff, but then working with our outside bodies, the Economic Development Corporation, to have thoughtful conversations with them.
So let's finish by talking about both ordinances. You guys developed these, you crafted both of these ordinances as model ordinances that other tribes can customize to their own purposes. And given the wealth of information that's available on these ordinances online, not only through your site, but through the Northern California Tribal Courts Group, why is Yurok going to such great lengths to share its approach and its lessons learned with other tribes?
I think in many ways we've kind of been at the forefront, at least in California, for our tribal court and our body of laws. You know, we don't have a lot of financial resources. Our strength is really in our culture and our natural resources, but where we can give back, especially to our neighbors, we always welcome the opportunity. So we, as I mentioned before, we view the development of codes and ordinances as the ultimate example and proclamation of your sovereignty. You know, Yurok, we have a very special place in the world. We have about 6,200 members. Our lands are well defined. We want to give aid to those tribes just around us because they're all a part of our world as well. And so if we can share that with them, I know that council would be very pleased if they adopted them.
So are you ready for the day when you get calls from tribes in Maine and Mississippi and Alaska saying, hey, we want to come and visit you and learn how you did this?
Oh, we love to host people. We have a beautiful river. We have a jet boat. Council is always very hospitable to our guests, but absolutely. And we've also been blessed to work with a lot of law school students and law school clinics who are interested in sharing the knowledge that we have, but also very important to us, expanding our jurisdiction that much more and going into new areas.
So one final question, from your perspective, how will these ordinances, once fully implemented, help Yurok create a brighter future for your people, for your place?
It goes back to balance. You know, unfortunately, in the past couple of years, I mentioned with the cartels coming in, just uneducation about what's happening to our water systems. We're in a really hard place right now. We've had back-to-back commercial fisheries failures. Our river is not healthy, but we are building the tools to prevent this from happening again and also restoring our river and our community. So I hope that when this ordinance is fully in place, we'll be able to say, you know, with confidence and conviction that no, these are not allowed in our lands. This is why, these are the consequences. And as a result, we'll start seeing a healthier community, a healthier river, and we'll see salmon back in the Klamath.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Cheyenne, for sharing your thoughts, experience, and wisdom with us. It's been an honor, and I look forward to following your story as it continues to unfold.
Thank you so much.